If you're watching this video, you either have a chameleon that's getting old, or you're preparing yourself, which I am in full support of hoping that one day your chameleon gets old. And truly, I hope every chameleon keeper gets to experience an elderly chameleon, but let's talk about what the signs are and what that entails. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I meant what I said. To have an elderly chameleon is such an honor and a privilege. And any animal, right? To see like them through the end of their life expectancy, but can be very, very difficult to watch them decline, to know what to do, how to help them. So we're coming up on 1 year. December of 2024 is when I lost Neptune, obviously who I named my channel after, my very first chameleon. And he was just shy of 7 years old. So the average life expectancy for most chameleon species kept in captivity, that's gonna be your Vaileds, Jacksons, Panther chameleons, is 5 to 7 years. And females can sometimes be a little bit less than that. And so when they're getting up there, 5, 6, 7, and I do know chameleons who have lived above 7 years old. What does that look like? What can you expect and how do you prepare? So some common things that I've personally experienced and also have seen through other like chameleon keepers is decreased appetite. So also weight loss that comes with that. They're just losing muscle mass, body weight, and they're just getting skinnier. So when my chameleons are kind of reaching this age, and I'll be honest, Luna, my Christopher Parsons, she's coming up on 7 years old as well. So I'm noticing all these signs with her. So please keep Luna in your thoughts as she's kind of, reaching that age. I will bump up their food. Typically an adult chameleon, we're feeding every 2 to 3 days, sometimes every other day, depending on how much you're feeding, what kind of bugs, etc. When my chameleons reach the elderly stage, I'm giving them as much as they'll eat, feeding them potentially every day, and giving them treat bugs. And the way that I look at this is like, this is their last hurrah, right? Like they're getting close to crossing over the rainbow bridge. It's kind of like giving your dog chocolate, before you bring them to the vet kind of thing. So I'm just trying to keep weight on them. If all they're eating is hornworms, I'm okay with that because I need them to keep on weight. I need them to just keep eating, and maybe 5 dubia roaches isn't cutting it. If they're still eating their crickets, their dubias, their silkworms, black soldier fly larvae, their staple feeders, amazing, but I'll throw in some fattier bugs, your superworms, waxworms, hornworms, just to try and keep some weight on them. You can also sometimes see changes in their colors. So chameleon cells, skin cells, the way that they work is that if they're contracted, then they're not going to let in a lot of light and they'll be their darker colors. And when they're the most relaxed, then they'll let in more light and be a lighter color. This is why at nighttime they'll turn a lighter color because their cells are in that relaxed state, versus the daytime they'll be contracted and they'll be a darker color. Now, as your chameleon's getting older, you may notice that they're turning a lighter color more often during the daytime. And again, those cells are relaxing as their body is just kind of slowing down. You can also see them be a little bit lethargic, not moving as much in their enclosure, just hanging out in one spot. Luna stayed in one spot for 5 days and she's moved to another spot and she's on day 4 of being in that spot. That's very common for elderly chameleons versus younger chameleons that are like up and down all around their enclosure. Triton is in his big boy enclosure. I would take him out if it wasn't close to bedtime. And he is all over his enclosure. Top, bottom, middle, left, right, you name it. Versus my elderly chameleons just aren't like that. Another thing we can see with elderly chameleons is like their functions kind of changing. So commonly we'll see tongue issues with elderly chameleons. So this could look a few different ways. One, their accuracy and aim isn't as great as it used to be. So maybe they're missing their bugs, whereas before they would be super, super accurate. Stickiness of their tongue is another one. Their tongue isn't sticking to the bugs quite as much. So maybe they're hitting the bug, but it's not sticking to the bug. So maybe it takes them a couple tries for them to finally grab it. Maybe how far they're able to shoot out their tongue is changing. So I've been tongue feeding Luna for probably a year year and a half now. I don't know if it was due to injury or age, but her tongue function is not what it used to be, so I will tongue feed her. I made sure with Neptune, who was a little bit more defensive, I would make sure that he had a shallow cup to eat his bugs in, so he didn't have to shoot his tongue as far to get to his bugs. So there are modifications. I have no issue tongue feeding an elderly chameleon, but if your chameleon is no longer able to feed themselves or eat on a regular basis, then, the conversation kind of changes. We can also see swollen limbs, their grip getting weaker, holding on to, maybe they're able to hold on a little bit lighter, their tail not as grippy or strong as it used to be. With that comes the potential for them to fall. If they're not able to hold on tightly or climb well, that could put them at risk for falling. So I would encourage you to maybe make some alterations to their enclosure. This could look like adding in more branches, a few more plants, and maybe even adding a soft blanket or towel to the bottom of their enclosure, just in the instance that they fall, that they have something soft to land on. So in my experience, that kind of stage of weight loss, slowing down, tongue and grip function not as great as it used to be, colors, lethargic behavior, I usually see a few months prior to a chameleon kind of passing away, reaching true end of life. Now this will obviously vary chameleon to chameleon, and it's super important that you're making sure that your care is solid. So making sure your UVB is being replaced within a year, making sure your temperatures are in the correct ranges, your humidity, your supplement routine is on point, because if they're older, there's just less margin for error, and chameleons already have a small margin for error. But what does it look like when they're reaching end of life? They're not just elderly, it's time. What does that look like? And this is honestly such a hard topic, but I feel like we need to discuss as reptile keepers and chameleon keepers specifically, is we need to know what those signs are and what to look for. So I can only go off of my experience, but in addition, I have the experience of fortunately getting hundreds of DMs and messages about dying chameleons and what that looks like. I am hesitant to include pictures of Neptune when he was reaching the end of his life. One, they're really difficult for me to look at. I did make sure to document it. I think for honoring Neptune's life and what I was able to do throughout the life of, getting a little emotional. I was able to help so many people with Neptune. So to be able to use his death and loss as a way to help educate keepers, like, I want to do that. It's been a year, and obviously is still really hard. And even having his babies, is a welcome distraction, but it's definitely difficult. So things that I noticed are sunken in eyes, decreased appetite, not even decreased, but no appetite. He was no longer eating, he was turning down food. And for a chameleon that loved food and would eat all the time, and it's hard too because I'm seeing these things with Luna currently. She hasn't eaten for a few days, so I know we're kind of switching to, just slowing down for the few months to the end of life stage. And then he wasn't reacting to me being there. So if you know Neptune or have seen any of my videos, he was a very, very defensive chameleon, where I would walk into the room and he would immediately puff up, gape, hiss at you. Luna's always been chill, but he wasn't really reacting. So basically a significant change in behavior. The big thing though, that in my opinion really pushes them over to the edge, is when they stop eating entirely, when they have significant weight loss despite offering them food regularly, sunken eyes, and I'm talking really sunken in, and those significant color changes. It's what we call the death colors. And again, I've seen this. I lost Apollo due to sickness. I lost Neptune due to being old. Luna's in that stage right now. I think you have to have a very honest conversation with yourself. And this is just my perspective and my opinion. Obviously, everyone has to decide what's best for them and their chameleon. But I ask myself, can my chameleon still be a chameleon? And by that, I mean, can they climb? on their own? Can they eat? Maybe I'm still tongue feeding them, but like they're able to eat and like, you know, get nutrition. And are they still showing pieces of their personalities, even if they're a little older, slowing down? Again, similar to what we see with like elderly cats and dogs. Once my chameleon can no longer be a chameleon, by whatever definition that is, I personally make the decision to euthanize my chameleons. Now, you could let them do their thing. You could let nature take its course. I would imagine it would go very quickly. Reptiles can't tell us that they're hurting. Reptiles can't tell us that they're suffering. Reptiles can't tell us when it's time. I think dogs can tell us a lot better through their body language and behavior and things like that. So I personally made the decision to euthanize Apollo, to euthanize Neptune, and I will choose to euthanize Luna if given the opportunity. And I think that's the best way that we can honor them for like the very last time, is by like doing what is, in my opinion, best for them, right? Putting them out of their suffering. So I would encourage you, if your chameleon's kind of reaching this elderly stage, end of life stage, get in contact with your reptile vet, understand what euthanasia entails. It is not necessarily a cheap thing. I want to say I paid $150 to maybe $200. I think $150 sounds right, to euthanize Neptune. So it's not like a cheap endeavor. And then how do you want to honor them? I have made a video on how to deal with the loss of a chameleon and talk about memorializing them. We've talked about how to deal with reptile loss on my podcast, the Wild Type Podcast. So you're welcome to check out that episode as well. And that's not the focus of this video. It's really like all the stuff leading up to it and how to prepare for them. If you want to kind of like give them more time in their falling, you could look at doing like a hospital bin setup. That'd just be like a Rubbermaid tub, soft blankie, probably not even branches if they're not holding on. Try and give them a heat bulb, UVB bulb, and then like you can let them pass naturally that way. Yeah, very hard topic, but I try to look at it as like, what an honor, truly. What an honor to be able to have an animal through their full life expectancy. Like Neptune was just months shy of turning 7 years old. Luna is months away from turning 7 years old. Like Neptune lived a full life, Luna's lived a full life. And yeah, what I would like is if you've experienced an elderly chameleon end of life stage, like if you're comfortable, share in the comments your experiences. Like what were the signs that you noticed? What were the steps that you took? Because I can only go off of my own experiences. But yeah, I know this isn't like a happy topic, but I think it's a necessary topic. And like I said at the beginning, whether your chameleon's in that stage now or you're just proactively preparing yourself, one thing that's kind of twisted, I talked about this in the podcast. One thing I did early on is like I kind of looked up pictures of dead chameleons to kind of like desensitize myself to what it looks like, because reptile deaths are like not pretty. Like they change these creepy colors. Their eyes get incredibly sunken in. They stay open. They're like skeletal looking because they're so skinny and bony. It just like, they don't look like themselves when they're alive is the gist of it. So it's a pretty like stark contrast, but I hope this video is helpful. I send you all of my love and like condolences for just like from one chameleon keeper to another if this is something that your chameleon's going through, but I try to encourage you again to look at it from the perspective of like doing right by them and looking at this as like a privilege to be able to like care for them for their whole life. So anyways, hopefully my next video will be a more light topic, but I have been wanting to discuss this, and obviously emotions are still fresh even though it's been a year. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave me questions or comments down below. You can subscribe so you know I post a new video. You can follow all of my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. Check out my website, neptunethechameleon.com. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! go. Just cried on the internet. Oh well. That's life. That's being human.